In 1947, 2 years after World War II gave way to the Cold War, Winston Churchill, the great British Prime Minister, remarked, "Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time." We are now 4 days from another election in the United States. As ever, the country appears profoundly divided, unable to agree even on the simplest, most basic elements of governance, like passing a budget. In this room, in fact, I know that there is a broad diversity of opinion, such that when we all get together, we're back in this building on Wednesday for lunch, there will be sizable portions of the population who are either elated or devastated. This week's Parsha tells the story of Noah and the flood. And in most years, like last year or next year, I would dive into perhaps the deeper meaning behind Hashem's decision to erase humanity and Hashem's subsequent remorse leading to the covenant with Noah. I might talk about Ham and the curse Noah placed on him. I might even dive into the story of the Tower of Babel. But tonight, with voting underway, I want to digress a bit to discuss with you all the ways in which Judaism extols the virtues of voting, a popular support of leaders being chosen rather than appointed. None of us can argue that King David, one of whose psalms we sang earlier this evening, is among the best known of Jewish heroes. But even he required the assent of the tribes of Israel. He, quote, made a pact with them in Hebron before Hashem. Even though David's soldiers had largely defeated those of Saul, his predecessor, this was not enough for him to just become king. He needed the consent of the people he would rule. Despite the myriad obligations that Judaism places on us, our rabbis have always insisted that we function as part of the societies in which we live. The Talmud teaches us that regardless of how much use we make of any particular public benefit we receive, we are responsible for paying for it. In other words, paying taxes for social benefits is a very Jewish responsibility with its origins in Gemara. And as we can see so far, rabbis have always acknowledged the Jews have a very specific responsibility to their surrounding society. We may choose to live largely in our own communities. I know there's a number of people who grew up in almost exclusively Jewish neighborhoods. We may choose to educate our children at Jewish schools and marry other Jews, but in the vast majority of the world, we remain citizens of the countries in which we live. And of course, with those rights come responsibilities to those societies. Judaism is also not quiet about what the religion considers to be the characteristics of a strong leader. Perhaps the most important trait is to recognize that as a leader, you should not be using that role for personal gain. You should not choose to take up that role for personal gain. You are there to serve your community and your constituents. Anyone attempting to use their elected office to benefit themselves and their associates is, by the Talmud, not considered worthy of the position and should be rejected. That's Tractate Horayot. For us, Jews, leadership should be limited both in scope, should not have unlimited power, and in time. You should not be able to be a leader indefinitely. As we read in a medieval piece of commentary, it is easy to go up to a bima, but it is tough to come down, which means it is easy to take power. It's easy to want power, but it's very, very difficult to give it up. Leaders that we choose should have specific, accomplishable goals after which they leave the stage. We know that this is hard. We know that this is a trait that does not come easily to most people, but that makes it even that much more important for the public to choose wisely. Many of you in this room have probably voted. I have. And if you haven't, first of all, vote. Definitely vote. But I want to leave you with this message. Whether you're voting for the President of the United States or the person who is responsible for managing the budget of your local town. You should keep in mind what our rabbis have for millennia said about leadership. Choose the candidate who aims to serve, not to rule. The candidate who can overcome the intoxication of prominence, in the words of Dr. Hal Lewis, or the candidate who, to quote Moses Maimonides, is able to cultivate a humble and lowly spirit and deal graciously and compassionately with the small and the great. Leadership is hard, and aspiring to be a leader of any community is a worthy goal. We have the responsibility, therefore, to choose the leaders who best represent our Jewish values, our ideals, and our morals. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.